Welcome to Storytime. Today's episode is all about Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome. Here are some terms and some people that you'll want to go ahead and jot down right now because I'll be referencing them throughout the video and you can get the spelling right. So do that right now for me. Okay, so we ended last time with the strange death of Romulus, and we talked about a couple different ways that he possibly died. And then here's what happened. The thing is, he had no male children. And so when he died, the senators got together, all 100 of them, and they decided to take turns being king for a day for an entire year. So think about that, 365 days in a year, you got 100 senators. So each person's going to be king for like 3 days a year, and then 65 get lucky and get to be king for a fourth day. And this goes on for a whole year, and at the end of the year, the majority of the people, the plebeians, they get together and they say, hey, look, having one king is bad enough, but having 100 is awful. And if you guys don't go back into that Senate House right now and give us one king and one king only, we're going to murder every single one of you. So the senators say, give us a minute, and they go right back inside the Senate House. They close the doors, and they debate amongst themselves, and they think, oh gosh, I guess it should be one of us, right? And so, boom, who do they pick? They pick this guy right here. There he is in all of his beauty. Numa Pompilius. What they do is they throw him outside, and they say, Romans, this is the guy that we think should be the next king. His name is Numa Pompilius. What do you say? And we have this strange precedent that gets established where the Romans actually vote on their king, although there's only one person on the ballot. So anyway, they're all like, yeah, sure, whatever, that's fine. Give us a king. We've got one king. We're good to go. Great. Now Numa. Oh, Numa. Everybody's favorite king. And why? Because Numa liked to have, I don't know how to put this, magical, mystical experiences in the woods by himself for many weeks at a time. You could fill in the blanks there. And so, he was a very peaceful man, just like, hey, whoa, everything's cool. He was also an extremely religious and spiritual man. And what he decided early on was that if Rome was going to be a great city, it had to become more spiritual. The city was founded by Romulus, and Romulus always had the people riled up, and they were always fighting against neighboring tribes. And Numa's whole thing was, no, man, whoa, you gotta give peace a chance. Just chill out, and enjoy nature, and commune with the gods, because that's what we should do. Now he knew this was going to be a tough sell for the Romans, so shortly after becoming king, he gathered people together and said, hey, I'm going to go have one of those magical, mystical experiences by myself in the woods for a couple of weeks. Goes out into the woods, and he's thinking to himself. He's sitting by this little stream one day, and he's thinking, gosh, how do I get these people to start loving and not fighting and killing each other? And then, boom, he gets an idea in his head. And here's the crazy idea that he comes up with. The stream that he's sitting next to, he is going to invent, essentially, a name for her, Egeria, and he is going to go back to the Roman people, and he's going to tell all of them, hey, you know what? When I was out in the woods, the river just came alive and formed itself into a goddess, and her name's Egeria, and we got married, and then she told me that we have to be peaceful and chill out and do all of the following religious things. And Numa actually thinks that this plan is going to go well. So he goes back to Rome. He calls the Romans together. And by the way, here's a depiction, a couple of artistic depictions. Please don't ask me about the stranger in the background. But look, here's Numa, and here's Egeria, the stream, come to life. And here she is in some sort of cave, and she's telling him stuff, and he's writing it down. He's like, oh, I gotta take it back to the Romans. And then you've got some strangers watching just for creepiness sake. And then, of course, here's another one right here, where she's like, hey, tell them to do this. So Numa goes back to Rome, and he tells the Romans this story, essentially, just made it up, this goddess or whatever. But he's very convincing, or at least he thinks he is. And he gets to the end of the story, and so he's like, so what do you think? I mean, she told me that we need to do all this religious stuff, so let's do it, right? And the Romans look at him, and they say, prove it. And Numa in his head is like, oh no, what do I do? And so, of course, because Numa's spiritual, what do you think he does? He says a prayer. He says a prayer to Jupiter. He's like, Jupiter, big boy, look, I want the Romans to be peaceful, and I'm doing this for you and all the other gods and goddesses. And I'm kind of in a bind here, man. I didn't think this all the way through, so, like, I think they're going to murder me unless you give them a sign right now. And Jupiter hears his prayer, ding, and sends, oh, I don't remember exactly how many, but let's say 9. 9 golden shields fall out of the sky and land in a perfect circle around Numa. And all the Romans who are in the forum are like, oh, what? Okay, you're right, King Numa, we should just chill out. And Numa was like, oh, thanks, big boy, Jupiter, really appreciate it. And they gathered, by the way, those 9 shields up, and they became very sacred emblems for the city of Rome, and were kind of paraded out at certain times of the year by the leaping priests of Mars. But anyway, getting back to the story here, so then, of course, Numa Pompilius establishes a lot of spiritual and religious practices that the Romans are known for. One thing he does is he builds a temple to his favorite god, which in Latin is pronounced Janus, but in English we say Janus, Janus. Of course, that J would be an I in classical Latin, Ianus. And Janus, as I mentioned earlier on the slide, is sort of the god of doorways, the god of passageways, sort of being in like a liminal space between two places, also the god of beginnings and ends, and he's always depicted as having 2 heads, and he's always sort of looking forwards and backwards. Well, this big temple of Janus was built to him in honor of him by Numa Pompilius, and the temple was interesting because it actually had 2 doors on it. Most temples only had 1 door. And the 2 doors, the statue was placed in the middle of the temple, and the doors were open when Rome was at war, so that the 2 heads of Janus could look out in both directions and sort of like see the past, see the future, and also sort of somehow magically help the Romans win the battles. And when Rome was at peace, the doors were closed in a big ceremony that was really important. Historians always mark it down like, oh my God, we closed the doors of the temple. And in fact, in Rome's history of, basically like 1,200 years, I don't remember how many times the doors were closed, maybe something like 6 or 7 total in 1,200 years. And of course, the first time they were closed is right as the temple was built, because, Numa's like, hey man, whoa, peace. Now, of course, he established lots of other temples and lots of other religious traditions. I'll just give you one more that's really important, is he instituted the worship of the goddess Vesta to the Romans. Vesta had been worshipped in Rome's mother town, Alba Longa, which is where Romulus and Remus were born. If you'll recall, their mother, Rhea Silvia, was the Vestal Virgin. And so in the Temple of Vesta, which we've talked about at least in Latin 2, but not in Latin 1 so much, there was an eternal flame that was always burning, and that eternal flame represented the strength and power of Rome, and the Vestal Virgins had to tend to that flame 24/7 to make sure it did not go out. It was a very sacred duty. It was illegal to even touch a Vestal Virgin. You would usually be executed upon the spot. The Vestal Virgins were held in very high regard. They actually had the authority to release people from death sentences or from any kind of prison sentence that was laid upon them. If a Vestal Virgin felt sorry for that person, all she had to do was basically go tap him on the head, and boom, he gets to go free. So he instituted that, which is really important. And then the last thing that Numa did was he changed the Roman calendar a little bit. The Roman calendar up to this point started in the month of March and ended in December, hence the fact that, when you think about it, September, October, November, December means 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th months. And the reason why is because that's what they used to be. And by the way, July used to be called Quintilis, the 5th month, and August used to be called Sextilis, the 6th month. Those 2 were renamed in honor of Julius Caesar and Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. But anyway, Rome used to be on a lunar calendar, and Numa Pompilius was like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on, but it's like December and the sun's out and something's gone wrong. So he gathered some astronomers together, and they all figured out that, you know what, we can't sustain this weird like lunar calendar mess. We need to add in 2 months of the year to kind of get the calendar back on track. And so they added in, of course, the month of January, named after Janus here, because in January you're kind of like looking forward, but also looking backward a little bit. And then the month of February as well. Now, he forgot to account for leap year, and it's not going to be until Julius Caesar comes along that he fixes that problem by making one year have 445 days. But don't ask, that's for a different day. And then Numa reigns for a long and very, very peaceful time, and everybody's like, yeah, woo, peace. And there's a problem. He doesn't have any male heirs. And so next time on Storytime, we'll get king number 3, a man by the name of Tullus Hostilius. Goodbye.